Hey, Bill here with Minnesota Bigfoot Sightings and Investigate Bigfoot. Out here doing a Memorial Day walk in this potentially possible Bigfoot area here. It's a park that's seldom used near our home. It has a lot of wetlands and deer and animals in it. With my faithful Bigfoot investigation companion and researcher, Daisy May, thought we'd come out here and take a Memorial Day walk and see if we find anything. And while we're walking around looking and enjoying this beautiful day, thought I'd relay a Bigfoot sighting encounter to you guys that was told to me. But before I do, let's take a moment of silence and remember our fallen heroes and fallen veterans. Many family and friends have passed on serving this great country. And let's take a moment of silence and thank them all. Okay, well, back to my encounter story. This was relayed to me. The story took place in one of our neighboring states to Minnesota, kind of a neighboring state, I guess. It was in Illinois, and it was relayed to me from some guys that lived by Kankakee, Illinois, a rural area around Kankakee, Illinois. And the sighting happened in the mid to late 80s, and during that time there was a huge rash of sightings and encounters of some unexplained creature or phenomena in that area. And this was just one of several that had been shared to us. It involved two guys. They were at their house. It was probably early summer. They had the windows open, enjoying the fresh air coming through their door, which was pretty common back then because we didn't have a lot of air conditioning in a lot of the houses back then like they do today. So they were just sitting and enjoying the breeze and watching a Cubs game on the TV. When all of a sudden a pungent odor, pungent odor, I guess, came through the door, and they were sitting there watching the Cubs game against the Cardinals, and this strange odor came in, and they looked at each other and they're like, "What the heck is that smell?" And he said he described it as like a mix of a really dirty, musky, wet dog that had rolled in garbage. And so a very pungent odor. But he said the odor, it kind of came and swept through the house. And they were like, wow, they were perplexed. And they were sitting on the floor in front of the TV with the door open, to get that air. And they both stood up and started looking around. And they were like, what the heck? And it was starting to get in the evening, so it was starting to get dark. And so they looked around and they noticed that the sun was setting and the street light across the street was on. And they were looking around, they're like, what the heck, And as they were looking around out the front door, they saw something cross from their side of the road, across the gravel road, towards the woods, and towards the Fort Cook area. And they said that this thing that they saw was covered in a brownish black hair. He said it appeared very dark black like, and it appeared to have crossed the road in like 3 strides. And they said it was huge. And they said that as it crossed the road, it kind of paused before entering into the brush. And there under the street light is where they got a really close look at it. And they said they don't know. They said it was not a bear, but it was a large creature, around 7 foot tall. And just big, massive. They said it looked like a bodybuilder in a gorilla suit. But they said it had no neck, and its face didn't really look gorilla-ish. They said it had deep-set eyes. They kind of had a hint of reddish orange as they reflected in that street light. It looked around really quick and was gone into the woods just like that, just disappeared. Huge, huge being. And it freaked them out. And they were telling everybody about it. And to go along kind of with that experience was around that same time frame, or it might have been a little bit earlier, there was a farmer out working in his field just down the road from there, going down with his tractor. It was right at dusk. Said he got to the end of the tree line, or the end of the field line, and something moved out of the field rows and headed really quick towards the tree line. And he said it was huge, 7, 8 foot tall. And it strided out of that field, crossed the small alfalfa clearing to the creek, and disappeared down the creek bank and was gone. He said he pulled his tractor, stopped his tractor, and just said the hair on the back of his neck just stood up. Just spooked him. And he said he didn't know what the heck he saw. He said, but it wasn't a bear. Even though when he called to report it, the conservation people said there's no bears in that part of the state. But they said that's probably what he saw, implying somebody might have had one as a pet and it had gotten loose. But he swore up and down there was no way that was the case. No way. So, I don't know. These stories were told to me by 2 very reliable sources. And I find them quite credible. And I know that summer and that fall and into winter, there was a lot of sightings in that area. People seen tracks. People heard cries in the middle of the night that they couldn't explain, like howls and whoops. And happened that whole year, whole year that year. They even had a sighting out in the state park there, which is kind of why I decided to walk in this park. You never know. But at the state park there, they had some people hiking down the trails. They were going back to go fishing, and they smelt a really strong, pungent odor, very much like what the first 2 guys described. It smelt like a dirty, wet, musky dog that had rolled in garbage. And they said that when they smelt it and they looked up, they saw something going through the trees, and it disappeared into the woods. So they reported it to the park ranger, and the park ranger wasn't really sure. They went out and did a preliminary investigation, and it kind of was sighted right around where the old hobo cabin was. So they just determined that it probably was a homeless man or a hobo living in in that cabin. But yet it was weird. When they searched the cabin, they didn't find any items that would belong to a person. But in the corner of the cabin was a big pile of leaves. Really big pile of leaves where something had been bedding down in there. So that was a perplexing story. And a lot of people would go out to the state park and investigate it just to see, you know, what was going on with it. There goes a crow. He's yelling at us. But and that happened right in a state park. And they had several people reported something splashing in the water in that same park. Rock throwing, noises in the middle of the night. They couldn't be explained. And a lot of people reported smelling something like that, the pungent smell. That's quite possible. I mean, it could be a bear, I guess. We're getting scolded. Somebody must have a nest up in one of them trees. So, anyhow. Then there was the encounter that still leaves me perplexed. There was a group of people that went out to go hunting one night. They were going to go coon hunting, and they were walking across a snow-covered frozen field. Got about halfway across got a quarter of a way across the field on their way they had to cross the field to get to the woods to go hunting. And about a quarter of a way across the field, they kept hearing something walking alongside the field. And the wind was starting to pick up a little bit. And they said it felt like somebody was watching them the whole time. Their hair stood up on the back of their necks. And they said it was just the eeriest thing. And they said they could clearly, when they were walking, they could clearly hear the footsteps. And then when they would stop walking, the footsteps would stop. And they said it was really weird, like whatever it was knew. But, so they kept walking to get out to the hunting spot. And by the time they got to the hunting spot, or got towards the woods, they were too afraid to go hunting. They said it was the oddest thing. I mean, they all felt it. It wasn't just one, but they all felt it. And none of them were really talking about it. And then one of them kind of piped up and said, "Hey, is anybody else hearing that and feeling that? Like somebody's watching us and you can hear footsteps?" And they were all like, "Yeah, we hear it. There's somebody over there walking." And it definitely sounded bipedal. But then they heard, as they got nearly to the woods, whatever it was, they could kind of see the dark outline of it in the edge of the woods, reflecting in the snow light. And it was a full moon and there was snow on the ground, so it was bright enough that you could see shadows over there in the trees. And whatever it was something big, and it was dark. And they panicked, they freaked out. They went to the other side of the woods, or the other side of the field, I should say, and just said, "Hey, we're not hunting, we're getting out of here." And they went back to the truck, and they said the whole way back, it kept following them, step by step. It was crazy. Every time they'd stop, it would stop. And then they swear they heard it grunt a few times. And we heard a knock. Very, very unusual. There was a knock they heard. Yeah. So then there was, in that same vicinity on Fork Creek, there was a guy, him and his wife, they were taking their 3 kids for their nightly walk down the creek. and they had kind of a trail there along the creek where everybody used to fish and stuff, and they used to take their nightly walks down there, and the kids would chase frogs and try to catch turtles and stuff, and sometimes they'd bring their fishing poles and they'd fish for some smallmouth and rock bass in there and stuff. But in this particular evening, it was getting late during the evening, and they were walking along, and I believe it was getting closer to the fall. And as they were walking, oh my gosh, can you smell that pine? That is so awesome. Oh my God, that is a beautiful smell. I love the smell of pine and cedar. Well, anyhow, they were walking along the creek, and they said they started smelling this really strong, musky odor of like rotten garbage, and it was getting stronger as they were walking, and it seemed to be coming from down on the banks of the water. And the area and the creek right there is really hilly, and this banks are can be pretty steep. So anyhow, they didn't know what to think of it, and the guy, Edwin, he started thinking. He's like, "Oh my gosh, there's something's around here. I can smell it." He goes, "What the hell is that? Something died?" And they just kept walking, and then as they walked, they could hear something cracking into the branches on the shore and in the brush. And then he said they heard like splashing. So he's like, "What the heck is that?" You know, and he thought, well, he couldn't figure it out. So he went and he looked at the water's edge, and he said there they saw some really large, hairy legs through the brush. He said they were thick, very, very solid, big legs in the brush, and they could see the outline of something behind the brush. And he said whatever it was massive. And he said they must have startled it, because it took off into the water and hit the water and took off down the shoreline. And next thing you know, it ran across the creek, up the bank and into the woods, and it was gone. And he said it was massive. He said every bit of 7-8 feet tall. And he said he told a few people the story, and they were like, "Oh, it had to be a bear." And he said there ain't no bear in this part of Illinois. And he said no bear can run on two legs like that. He said no bear can clear at 30, 40 feet across that creek and clear it in 3 or 4 strides like that thing did. And he said it climbed the bank on the other side like that bank wasn't even there. He said it was like 1, 2, and it was up, gone. He said when we fished over there, he said we'd have a heck of a time climbing up and down that bank because it was so steep and slippery from the wet ground and the mud and stuff. He said this thing just went up it and down and gone. And that all happened within say 1 to 3 miles from each sighting that summer and in that winter. And then everything just kind of quieted down, and didn't have any more reports from there for a while. So yeah, and his kids to this day are still perplexed by what they seen. There was a lot of hunters, deer hunters, that fall, early winter that fall, that were also reported smelling that same thing and seeing footprints in the snow that were just 18 to 22 inch footprints. It looked like a man walking barefoot. And some of them even got glimpses of a large, shadowy, hairy figure in the pre-dawn hours. You know, a lot of deer hunters, they get out there, they get in their stand while it's still dark, and then they sit and they wait for the sun to come up, and you know, hopefully you'll see some deer while the sun's coming up to get a good shot. And these people, some of these hunters were so freaked out they wouldn't even go back in that area. They said that whatever it was, It was massive, and one guy reported that it walked right underneath his deer stand, and he said that it just walked right underneath the deer stand, right up the side of the old railroad tracks and gone. And he said it scaled the hill like effortless, and it would have took him a huge effort to get up that hill, but it was just up and gone. Anyhow, that's my tale. We haven't really spotted any cool Bigfoot stuff out here. We've seen some good scenery, and beautiful day, nice cloudy day, beautiful. It's probably 70 some degrees today. Great day to be out and walking and investigating. Well, that's it for my stories. I hope you enjoyed them, and I hope you have a great Memorial Day, and have a great time with your family, friends, and remember our fallen heroes, our veterans this day. And if you have any Bigfoot encounters or stories you'd like to share, please email them to us at minnesota.bigfootsightings.com. It's mnbigfootsightings@gmail.com. Or you can email us at invbigfoot@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, or you can put remarks or comments or remarks or questions, or relay your story in the comment section below. Thank you for listening, and have a great Memorial Day.